From a man kidnapping a woman to keep her as a slave, to insane people hitching a ride only to end up murdering a man's entire family, we take a look at 13 of the creepiest hitchhiking stories. Number 13. The Triangle of Death. During the 1980s, the Marne region of France became known as the Triangle of Death. A large number of army conscripts from the 3 military garrisons in the area wound up vanishing without a trace, often while hitchhiking. The first known victim was Patrick Dubois, a 19-year-old conscript from the 4th Dragoons Regiment at Mormillon-le-Grand, who mysteriously disappeared on January 5, 1980. Over the next 7 years, a total of 8 young men went missing in the region. Most of them were army conscripts, and the only victim to be recovered was a 20-year-old Irish hitchhiker named Trevor O'Keefe, who was found strangled to death in August 1987. 1 year later, authorities uncovered a likely culprit, Pierre Chenal, a former commando who was the senior warrant officer of the 4th Dragoons. Number 12. The Disappearance of Connie Smith. During the summer of 1952, 10-year-old Wyoming resident Connie Smith was attending Camp Sloan in Salisbury, Connecticut. On the morning of July 16th, Connie had a violent altercation with some other campers, leaving her with a bloody nose. Connie then said she was heading to the dispensary to return an ice pack, but she decided to leave the camp instead. Several witnesses reported Connie asking for directions to the town of Lakeville, about a half a mile away. She was last seen holding out her thumb to hitchhike on US Route 44 before she completely vanished. Camp counselors didn't notice that Connie was missing until they found the ice pack inside her tent that afternoon. After more than 60 years, Connie Smith's fate remains a mystery. Number 11. The Disappearance of Amy Billig. During her teen years, it was not uncommon for 17-year-old Amy Billig to hitchhike through the Miami area. On the afternoon of March 5, 1974, Amy left her home in Coconut Grove. She planned to visit her father's office and was last seen hitchhiking along Main Highway. She never arrived at her destination. Amy's camera was later found at the Wildwood exit on Florida's Turnpike, but she was never heard from again. Throughout the next several years, Amy's mother, Susan Billig, would be dragged on a bizarre journey as she attempted to find her daughter. A biker named Paul Branch approached Susan and told her that Amy had been abducted and was being held captive by a biker gang called the Pagans. Unfortunately, Susan Billig passed away in 2005 without ever finding out the truth about what happened to her daughter. Number 10. The Abduction of Colleen Stan. In 1977, Cameron Hooker met experienced 20-year-old hitchhiker, Colleen Stan, who felt safe climbing into Hooker's blue van because Hooker's wife, Janice, and their baby were also inside. Once they were in an isolated area, Hooker pulled off the highway and put a knife to Colleen's throat. Janice relented to Cameron capturing a slave so she'd be spared from his violent bondage fantasies. While captured, Colleen was forced to endure horrendous conditions. She was fed cold scraps, beaten, tortured, and sexually abused. For years, she was locked in a tiny box beneath the marital bed for 23 hours a day and given a small bedpan for bodily functions. During the summertime, the box reached temperatures over 100 degrees. Hooker exerted control by psychologically breaking his victim. He led her to believe she was being watched by a powerful organization called The Company, which would torture her and her family if she attempted escape. She was assigned a slave name and banned from speaking without permission, and was also forced to sign herself into slavery for life. Number 9. The Orange Sock Murders. It takes a very brazen killer to abduct and murder 2 separate women at 2 separate locations at 2 separate times on the same night. But that's exactly what happened in 1982 near the town of Breckenridge, Colorado. At the time, Breckenridge was known as a safe community, so hitchhiking was pretty much a daily occurrence for many of its residents. On the evening of January 6th, 29-year-old Bobby Jo Oberholzer phoned her husband, Jeff, to let him know she was hanging out with friends at a local pub and would get a ride home. Bobby never arrived. Jeff went searching for her the next morning and eventually found his wife's body in a remote field. Bobby had been shot to death. Curiously, an orange sock that did not belong to her was found nearby. 6 months later, the body of another missing woman, 21-year-old Annette K. Schnee, was discovered in a wooded area, 13 miles from where Bobby was found. Annette had been sexually assaulted and shot to death. She also happened to be wearing the matching orange sock from Bobby's murder scene. Number 8. 3 indiscriminate murders. In 2001, convicted bank robber and all-around bad guy Gary Sampson posed as a hitchhiker to carjack and murder 3 helpless people. The murders took place over a week, with the first 2 occurring in Massachusetts and the third in New Hampshire. The first victim was Phillip McCloskey, age 69. After McCloskey stopped and picked them up, Sampson forced him at knife point to drive to a secluded area, where he tied him up with his belt and stabbed him 24 times. Jonathan Rizzo was the youngest victim at 19. Sampson also forced young Rizzo to a secluded area, where he tied him to a tree, then gagged and killed him. The third victim, Robert Whitney, was 58. Sampson turned himself in for his crimes in Vermont. Number 7. The Albert Brust abductions. In July 1973, 15-year-old runaway Mary Ellen Jones went to the Fort Lauderdale police with a horrifying story. She had been hitchhiking with her 16-year-old boyfriend, Mark Matson, when they were picked up by a middle-aged man calling himself Eric. Eric took the young couple to his home, but then forced them to perform sex acts at gunpoint while he took photographs. At one point, Mark made a grab for Eric's gun, but was shot 3 times. Mary was then held captive for the next 24 hours. She was chained up and repeatedly raped inside a makeshift soundproof torture chamber. Surprisingly, Eric decided to let Mary go, but warned her not to share her story. Nonetheless, Mary went to the police. But after contacting the girl's mother and learning that Mary was a known pathological liar, they completely disbelieved her story. Number 6. Murder on the Victorian border. In 1990, the bodies of 2 teenage outcasts were found viciously stabbed in some grasslands on the Victorian side of the Victoria-South Australia border. Teenagers Fiona Burns and John Lee were last seen hitchhiking along the Western Highway, not far from the South Australian Highway. The pair were habitual runaways who frequented rough hangout spots like youth hostels and pinball parlors, where drugs and trouble are found. There were fears that the pair might have been picked up by an opportunistic truck driver. Fiona's mother, however, believed their deaths could be linked to the pair's association with an occult group. Police even explored the possibility that this mysterious case was linked to famed Australian backpacker murderer Ivan Milat. But with no substantial leads, the case has gone nowhere. To this day, Victoria police have not charged anybody with the murders. Number 5. Lydia, the Vanishing Lady. The story goes that on a rainy night in 1923, a young woman named Lydia traveled to Raleigh to attend a dance with her boyfriend. The couple was driving home to High Point on Highway 70 when they collided with another car at a narrow underpass. Lydia was killed instantly and happened to be wearing a white evening gown that night. Ever since then, there have been numerous sightings of a female hitchhiker at that location, wearing that exact outfit. One notable sighting involved a motorist named Burke Hardison. He was driving near the underpass one night when he saw a woman in a white evening gown signaling for help. Hardison picked her up, and the frantic woman said she needed to get home to High Point, since her mother would be worried. She provided her home address, but when Hardison arrived at the house, the girl completely vanished. Number 4. The murder of the Prendergast family. In November 1958, Thomas Prendergast from El Cajon, California, picked up Carl Alfred Eder, a 16-year-old runaway hitchhiker from New York. Eder was homeless, and Prendergast felt sorry for him, so he decided to let Eder stay with him and his family until Eder got back on his feet. However, Prendergast would come to regret that decision after leaving for work on December 12th. When Prendergast returned home, Eder was already standing outside the house and asked for a ride to San Diego. Prendergast complied and dropped Eder off at a service station. Prendergast then went back home again and made a horrifying discovery. His wife, Lois, was shot to death. The couple's 4 children, 9-year-old David, 6-year-old Thomas Jr., 4-year-old Diane, and 2-year-old Alan, had been murdered with a hunting knife. He was subsequently given 2 life sentences. In October 1974, Eder managed to escape from prison and has never been recaptured. He left behind a note which read, "I've done enough time, and I'm leaving." Number 3. The Well Hallo hitchhiker. Much like Lydia, the vanishing lady in North Carolina, the state of South Carolina has its own famous urban legend about a vanishing phantom hitchhiker. According to local legend, a ghostly male figure wearing a dark, all-weather coat has been seen haunting Highway 107 near the city of Well Hallo, South Carolina for the past several decades. He is known as the Well Hallo hitchhiker. Depending on which direction the vehicle is traveling, the mysterious man asks to be dropped off at either the Piedmont Overlook or Moody Springs after he is picked up. Given that he often appears on dark and stormy nights, his decision to visit scenic tourist sites seems bizarre. After the hitchhiker arrives at his destination, he exits the vehicle without saying a word and promptly vanishes without a trace. Number 2. The murder of Phillip Fraser. In 1988, 25-year-old Phillip Fraser had plans to attend the Evergreen State College in Olympia, Washington. On June 14th, he left his hometown of Anchorage, Alaska to drive to Evergreen and complete his enrollment. Fraser first had to cross the border and drive through Canada. On June 18th, he stopped at a cafe in the rural community of 40 Mile Flats. It was there he crossed paths with an unidentified male hitchhiker, who asked Fraser for a ride. According to an eyewitness, Fraser initially turned down the man's request and started driving away, but suddenly reconsidered and stopped his car to let the man climb inside. This would be the last time Phillip Fraser was seen alive. On July 27th, Fraser's body was found in a remote gravel pit near the community of Stewart. Many of his personal possessions, including his birth certificate and passport, were never recovered. Number 1. The Castration Murders. On June 12, 1982, 22-year-old Marty Shook left his mother's home in Sparks, Nevada to travel to Colorado. He was planning to hitchhike to reach his destination. 2 days later, a fly fisherman discovered Marty's nude body near Daniels Canyon in Wasatch County, Utah. He was shot in the back of the head with a .38 caliber pistol. Most disturbingly, Marty's genitals had been removed and were missing from the scene. The case would remain cold until 1989, when authorities connected it to the murder of another hitchhiker the previous year. The murders still remain unsolved.